Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a couple of thoughts and questions. Over the past several months, we have seen a troubling trend of the EPA deliberately avoiding transparency and accountability. When members of EPA's own Science Advisory Board raised serious questions about the NSPS rule, astonishingly, the agency claimed that storage is beyond the scope of this rule. In other words, the EPA wants people to believe that carbon capture and storage systems don't have to consider where the carbon goes, and neither does the agency. It is misleading and dangerous for the EPA to quietly dismiss inconvenient facts. Do you agree?
I have to disagree with the premise of your question, Congressman. We very much respect the role of the SAB. We engaged with them in a very open process. All the conversations we had with them were completely open to the public and on the record.
Okay, I would like to submit this letter for the record. This is a letter from the EPA's Science Advisory Board. I'll just read one sentence here, actually a couple sentences. It says that the portion of the rulemaking addressing coal-fired power plants focuses on carbon capture, and that the regulatory mechanisms for addressing potential risks associated with carbon sequestration, carbon capture, are not within the scope of the Clean Air Act. And this is the advisory board. Carbon sequestration, however, is a complex process, particularly at the scale required under this rulemaking, which may have unintended multimedia consequences. The board's strong view is that a regulatory framework for commercial scale carbon sequestration that ensures the protection of human health and the environment is linked in important systematic ways to this rulemaking. This letter has been submitted in the record. Even though the EPA officials sought to, obviously not take this into account, the EPA science advisors continue boldly to call for a thorough review of the science the science underlying this rule. Will you commit to me today that you will heed your own science advisors and await a full review of the serious concerns raised by the Science Advisory Board before finalizing this rule?
We will, of course, work with our Science Advisory Board, but what I'll reflect to you, Congressman, is what the board recognized was that within the four corners of this proposed rule, the regulatory approach and to the sequestration and storage is not within the four corners of this rule. It is addressed in other regulatory programs.
So real quick,
today.
The law doesn't require the agency to examine non-air environmental consequences of CCS systems?
That is a provision of the law.
Okay, but it's not a provision of what you deem appropriate in this rule?
No, not at all. Not at all. I was trying to clarify that the Science Advisory Board recognized that sequestration, underground injection of carbon, is addressed in other regulatory programs, not in this one. Okay,
does the agency consult with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to determine if this rule would impact endangered or threatened species?
We have not consulted with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife on this provision.
Do you intend to?
We will comply with all applicable requirements, including that one, if it is deemed to be applicable here.
So again, will you commit to me that that you will not go forward with this rule until you have examined the environmental consequences for non-air parts of the environment?
I will commit to you that before we finalize these rules, we will assure ourselves that we have satisfied all the legal requirements associated with this particular rulemaking.
Although I understand the proposal does not currently require carbon capture and storage for gas or oil power, can you assure me that the agency will not consider requiring CCS for gas-fired power plants in the future?
We do not have a factual basis that suggests that's an appropriate thing, which is why we did not include it in this rule.
Can you assure me that the agency will not consider requiring CCS for gas-fired power plants in the future?
We do not have present plans to move in that direction.
Can you assure me that the agency will not consider requiring CCS for gas-fired power plants in the future?
I can't commit the agency indefinitely into the future, Congressman. I can tell you where we are right now, and we do not foresee that.
One other thing that I think is important there is potentially the application of the new SPS standards or similar assumptions or reasoning to existing plants that are modified and reconstructed. Can you assure me that the agency will not require CCS for modified and reconstructed coal-fired power plants?
That is a rule that will come out as a proposal later this spring, and that rule will lay out what the expectations are there. I'll tell you that we're looking at those facilities which are existing in a different way than we look at brand new unbuilt power plants.
You mentioned one project that's in Oklahoma, Sandy Point, as one of the projects that is a demonstration of the capability and the technology. How many of these projects are there?
I cited 3.
Are they all power plants?
Those 3 are power plants. So the 3 I cited are power plants. There are many other industrial applications of the technology as well, but I was asked specifically about power.
And for the record, can you submit what the current size and the status of those power plants are? My time has expired.
Sure. We'll follow up with that information.
Thank you, Ms. Brains.